Okay, in this video, we're going to go ahead and repair this aged photo. So, in order to repair it, there's a few things that you'll want to do. I always, when I'm doing something, especially in Photoshop, working on something, I'm going to go ahead and close this out, close this out. I always want to make sure I don't mess with the original, so I'm just going to click and drag it over, and it will make a copy. Just drag it over that copy image right there. So now you can see I have two images. Now I have one that I'm going to work on and one that is going to stay locked so that I don't mess up with it. First thing I'm going to do is I want to straighten the photo. So I'm going to add a few little things here and there just to kind of rejuvenate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the polygon lasso tool. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on that little edge right there, click right here, there, and there we go. Make sure when you select the polygon lasso tool that you have 0 pixels in your feather or it will blur. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this image out. And as you can see, it's missing there. I'm going to go ahead, just to hide this, I'm going to do the next thing. I'm going to create another layer, and I really want to be able to see this clearly, so I'm going to go ahead and use black. So I've clicked on my color palette, clicked on there, drug down to black. Now I'm going to go here and hit my paint bucket and paint the black. Now you can see I've painted over this area, but you can still see this, and that's because this foreground or this new layer of the background copy is there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Now I have a black layer. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command V, and that's going to paste this image in there. Now what I want to do is I want to rotate it. In order to get it so that it's level, I'm going to, from the guides up here, I'm going to click and hold down and it brings a guide. I'm going to put a guide about right there-ish. Another guide. And you don't have to do this. This is just something that when you're trying to make a photo square, it just kind of helps. So there we go. I'm going to do that. This is still selected. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command T for the transform. And if you don't know how to get to the command buttons, if you go to whatever you're going to do, for example, I did Command T, which is free transform, you can see this is, I'm working on an Apple, it is Command and T. So rather than going up here, dragging down to Command T, I just get familiar with what those are. So I'll hold down Command T, and now you can see my transform box has showed up so I can adjust it. And I'm just going to adjust it a little bit here. That looks pretty good. Looks pretty straight. So I'm going to go ahead and double click and that will apply what I just did. Then I'm going to use my pointer tool, and with the keypad I'm going to type up a couple times. And now I have aligned my photo a little bit better. Now it still isn't quite right, so I'm going to Command T again, and I'm going to make it a little bigger. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to edit it out. So now I've just lined up everything with my guides, and I have the marquee tool, and I'm going to click and drag, and it's going to snap to guides. Now make sure that if for some reason you're clicking and dragging and it's not lining up with your guides, if you go to View, Snap to, it should have guides checked. If it's not, that's why it's not lining up with your image here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert my selection, because I've got my marquee tool right here. Shift Command I just inverted it, and I'm going to hit delete, and now I have a pretty straight, you can see there's a little bit of an area right there, but I'm going to fix that with something else. Now it's time to get into the editing of the photo. What you're going to want to do is, before you get going too crazy, is save. And I always do a save as, so I'm going to go ahead and save as, and we'll leave it at that for now and save it. Because I'm using a, go ahead and hit save, because I'm using a JPEG, now I've just saved it as a PSD file. So it's now I'm not actually working on the JPEG that I opened in Photoshop. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my zoom tool and I'm going to click and hold. By the way, I'm working on Photoshop cs6. I also have in the Adobe Photoshop CC. So if you don't know which one I'm on, right now I'm on cs6, but it will work pretty close. It works almost identical. So now that I've zoomed in pretty close, you can see there's some stains and things like that. So what we want to do to try to keep the integrity of this is we're going to try to adjust these big cracks. There's lots of big cracks in that. So I'm going to use the clone tool. And now that I have my clone tool, it's really, really tiny. So I can either click up here and bring the size up, or I can use my bracket. Well, you got to make sure you close this. I can use my bracket to make it bigger. Bigger opening and closing will make it bigger and smaller. So let's just test an area. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and clone a little area right here. So I'm going to click and copy. And this takes some time. Now notice it comes over here. That's okay. That's why we have the guides, because we're going to be cutting all of those off. And the reason I'm not going to just replace the whole background image is because I want this to still have that feel of it's authentic, not just copy and paste a white background. So I'm just taking bits and pieces, and what I'm doing is holding down Option, and it gives me the crosshairs of where I want it. I hold down Option, click, and that will give me my crosshairs. Then I click to copy, and there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and just take bits and pieces. As you can see, it's starting to look a little nicer in this area over here. Again, try to stay as close as you can to where you're editing, or it will look fake. The other thing we'll be using is paintbrushes, but for right now, let's just kind of do this. Now, if you had a bigger area that was cleared up, you can then change and adjust your brush size. But because I still have a pretty small area to work with, and I still want it to look somewhat original when I'm messing with this, I'm not going to do it too bad. But if you just already, if I've just turned this layer off for a second, you can see the difference already that it's doing. In the picture, it has a little bit of a darker color, so we're going to make sure that we keep that darker, and then we'll add a white border around it. I'm just telling you kind of what we'll be doing. But as you can see, I'm just taking bits and pieces, just areas that look good, and going over them. So to make sure, and copy the area, and I'm just holding Option and holding it down, and it copies. The problem is if you don't move it around when you copy other bad areas. See how I copied that? That didn't work. So you need to make sure you have an area that is clear from that. Now this does take a while. It's not something that you want to rush, especially if you want it to turn out right. So just so you can see, I'm just going to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'll speed all of this up and do a finished product. But let's go ahead back to the hair and to the photo. I'm going to zoom in even a little bit more. And the reason is just so that I can be very close to attention to my detail on this. So I'm going to copy a little area about right there and paste it. Same thing there and there. I'm kind of just going back and forth and trying to stay as close to this as I can so that it doesn't look awkward, but the shine will then stay somewhat the same. As you can see, we've got a little bit, it's a little harder over here to work on, but that's all right. Just do it a little bit at a time. This is where your patience will come in and really go for it. Now you see I have an area right here that's a little lighter and an area right here that's a little darker. So I'm going to change tools for a minute and I'm going to use my spot healing brush and I'm just going to click and drag just a little bit. And that's going to kind of merge the two. Now it doesn't look near as bad. The other thing that you can do, if you're in an area that doesn't require a lot of cloning or it's you know, like a spot right here, I can click on that spot and it'll be gone. Same thing with these wrinkles. But the problem with doing it like that is it doesn't always copy over right. It'll sometimes copy more wrinkles. But we'll use the spot healing tool for a minute and it takes a little bit of it, and all I'm doing is clicking and dragging right here. This is pretty basic. Now you see that it kind of smudged, so you got to be careful not to get too close, and the clone tool would be better for that. If you got an area that's very similar, just trying to clean up the patches there a little bit. Looks like you got a little bit of some stain right there. All right, same thing here. Again, just kind of cleaning it up. Just dragging little bits of it. Let's go ahead and clean up right here too. See that? And drag it over. And it'll get rid of those cracks. So I'm just kind of dragging over these cracks and just trying to blend it a little bit better than what it was maybe. It's looking pretty good, so I'm going to keep doing it. Right here might be tricky. Right here would be a good idea to use the clone tool again. But I'm going to just do a little bit more. Okay, again, if I was doing this for a client, obviously I'd be taking a lot more time and zooming in even closer. But for time's sake, I'm just going to go over. Now I'm still using the spot healing tool. I didn't go back because there's a lot of this that's very close. So I'm just, meaning that it's close to the side there. So I'm just using the spot healing and it's just taking pieces that are close to it to adjust it and make it closer. There's a spot right there. Again, for a client, you'd want to make sure that you zoom in and take your time, but I'm just, again, showing you the awesome tool of this spot healing brush, or tool actually. Still kind of just pulling it over. It is getting, now this is going to get really messy, so I'm going to go back in, delete that stuff. I'm going back to my clone tool because if I did the spot healing, it's not going to look right. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. And it doesn't hurt also when you're doing this to use both, to use your spot healing and your clone tool. Like I'm taking the darker age marks off of this right now, and then I'll most likely run my spot healing tool to blend it a little bit better. There's a big gouge right there. And I don't really know what the picture looks like, so I'm going to just take a guess and go something like that. Now I've got a little cleaner spot. I'm going to make the brush a little smaller. That is way off, so I'm going to go right here. Again, way off. So I need to copy up in this area. That looks better. So again, Probably be a good idea to zoom in even more. Go back to my clone tool. And I'm just going to clone little bits of this. You can see there's a little bit of brown right there. I'm going to try to clean that out. Now that's going to be really off on the color. So I go in. Do something like that. Now I'm going to take my spot healing tool, shrink it down a little bit, and I'm going to drag right in here, here. This will soften it up, give it more of a natural look. All right, let's zoom out. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Again, before, after. So it's already starting to look a lot better. I've got all of that in there. Okay. Again, we'll go back in here. I'm going to use the spot healing tool, make it a little bigger, zoom in, and now that these are closer, these etch marks will blend a lot better. Again, for the time of the video, I'm going very fast. As you can see, got some right there. Okay, that's looking a lot better. Got a little bit right there, some right there. Now I've got another big piece right here. There's two things I can do. I can make the brush bigger, which for time-wise, that's going to speed us up quite a bit. Again, you have to be careful right in here. We'll probably have to go back over with the clone tool. That is not going to work right there, and I doubt it'll work there, but I can clean up a lot of this area with it. Now you notice, you see there's a little bit of smudging there. Okay. We'll go ahead and back it out. And we're getting a lot better. Let's go ahead and first I'm going to use the tool. The problem that you run into if you use this too much is that it kind of smears, and with that smearing it gets blurry. If you're not blowing it up super big, then it's not that big a deal. But if you're blowing it up for a picture or something, sometimes those little blur marks make it pretty bad. So from here, again, I'm going to use my clone tool, and I'm going to just take bits and pieces. So I can take right in here, try to blend it a little bit more, even just a little bit. No, that did a really bad job. Even just a little bit, and then I will be able to click and smooth those out. So I'm going to make it a little smaller. There we go. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up, and then we'll get into some more colorization. Okay, we're going to go ahead and finish this up real quick. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take these bigger pieces, and we're going to go ahead and just clean them up a little faster. So I'm just making my spot healing tool a little bigger. Now, if it for some reason blurs a little bit much, then you're going to want to do that. Now, some of these imperfections you're going to want to leave, because this is what you still want the photo, even though it's an older photo and torn, you still want it to have that sentimental, oh, this is a, you know, an older photo, So you want that look like it's an older photo, but you don't necessarily want all of these distractions. So I'm just taking big old swipes with the spot healing brush tool, and it's just kind of meshing everything together. It's looking pretty good. There's a couple little stains right there. Yeah, let's see how it kind of meshed. Go too big and get too greedy, and then it doesn't work out right. So you need to make sure that you're close. And I'll have to use my other tool. Okay, so again, all I'm doing is just running through this real fast. Now I'm taking big old chunks and just kind of copying it. It should probably be a little bit more precise, but for the tutorial sake, I'm just showing you how to get this in a pretty quick way to look decent. Doing it for your mom, you better spend a lot more time on it than what I am. Okay, same thing here. I just made my brush a little bigger. And now let me come over here, do the same thing. It does help to go the same direction when you're doing the cloning as if the fabric, if it has fabric. Because if you don't, then it looks kind of funky. I kind of go up and down. Again, this is mainly a very, very fast edit. Now we got a little bit of a different color here, so I'm going to make sure that we use that color. But I can get away with this right here. And again, just mess with it, play with it. I'm just going to do this whole thing right here. And it'll cut off with a sweater, so I'm not really too worried about that. I'm going to undo my selection, go back to my clone tool, make it a little smaller, and I'm going to clean up right here and right there. Let's go ahead and see. Need a little bit more of this going up here. And then this goes up just a little bit.